still teaches, we're going to show you an aspect of debate that I actually didn't really fully understand until well into sophomore year. That's right, we are building the first affirmative constructive. Now, here's the importance of the first affirmative constructive. Basically, when you're affirmative, you're going to be putting forward a plan. This is what you think should happen in the status quo. You think the status quo is bad and that something should change. Plans are basically, we need to build something, we need to pass a bill, we need to either loosen or put forward regulations. Basically, a plan can be absolutely any number of things. However, the plan is always introduced in the first affirmative constructive. This is your best foot forward. This is the one document that you're going to be defending throughout the entirety of the round. So let's get started. Now, one little bit of a notation here. I'm already basically going to be assuming that you know what stock issues are, because I know of 5 other people who did stock issues videos, so realistically you should watch those first. So let's talk about building the 1AC. The 1AC should always be basically this little thing that we like to call prima facie. What prima facie is that basically it's a Latin term that means at first face. At first face, at the first glance, after the 8 minutes that you've read it, your 1AC should be a complete case. It should basically have all the stock issues in it. It should explain why it's necessary, why it's a good thing, why it needs to happen. Basically, it needs to be a complete idea coming out of those 8 minutes. So, with that in mind, let's look at the structure of a 1AC. Structure of 1AC is generally in this order: inherency, plan, solvency, and then your advantages. So let's look at inherency. Inherency, as you know, is why the plan needs to be passed. What's happening in the status quo that prevents it from being passed? In other words, if your plan isn't inherent, then there's no reason for the judge to pass the plan, because it's just going to happen anyway. Why pass a policy twice? Now, here's the thing with inherency. Inherency generally comes first because it's a good way to introduce the judge to your plan. It's basically saying, here's the status quo right now, here's what status quo isn't doing for us, and here's really opening up the situation so that we know that the opposing team and the judge both know in what general direction you're going to be going in. Inherency cards are generally like something like, the plan isn't happening because there's bureaucracy, plan isn't happening because just nobody's thought of it yet, plan isn't happening because there's no mechanism for us to actually enact it. Basically, all sorts of things that show us why the plan is not going to happen. Comes first. It's a good intro into your the rest of your case. Inherency pretty much always comes first. After inherency is arguably the most important part of your entire case. The most important part of your case is the plan. Basically, this is this little thing called the plan text, which is one or more sentences that spells out basically what exactly you're going to be doing to the status quo. Your plan is one sentence that says something along the lines of, the United States federal government should do X, or should pass X, or should adopt X. Basically, whatever you want the plan to be doing. Now, here's the thing. The plan is your advocacy. So you need to be very terrifically careful of what you put into it. Basically, you want to make sure that what's in there makes sense, what's in there is something you can defend, and really, it's very important that you do these things because you cannot spike out of it. Because if you decide to change your plan text halfway through a round, the negative team will get up and say, we cannot debate you, they're being unfair because they're changing their plan text whenever we make an argument. Do not change your plan text. Make sure, generally, you want to specify funding, and you want to specify who enforces this, and you want to specify for how long or whatever time frame you need to deal with. Now, here's really the second most important part of your plan, or some people say the third, which is solvency. Solvency is oftentimes some people's longest contention, or at least it should be about as long as your advantages. Solvency is a big long line of cards showing us why your plan can solve. It's basically the roots of why your plan can solve. It's basically all of the solvency stock issue. So these will be cards like, our plan can solve because X, our plan can solve because of this process, our plan solves better than the status quo, our plan does all sorts of really great things. Basically, you want to prove that you can solve for your advantages. And speaking of, let's go into advantages. Advantages are why your plan is good. Advantage is basically saying that the status quo is bad. In the status quo, something bad is going to happen. We're about to get into a war. Our economy is about to collapse. Our environment is about to collapse. All sorts of things I talked about in my impacts video last episode. And what your advantages are is how your plan stops that thing from happening. For instance, this year's desalination case, which was basically saying, right now, in the Nile River Basin, Egypt and a bunch of other countries are about to start beating up on each other because they're running out of water. They're about to get into a resource war over water. They need, basically, to get water at any cost necessary, and that is going to necessitate entering into a war. Now, the problem with that is that basically the war is the impact. War is what the negative team needs to disprove. So, war is a net benefit for your case. Your case is good because you stopped the war. Now, how did this case I'm talking about stop the war? Well, they basically gave Egypt water. They produced desalination plants, they sold them to Egypt and the rest of the countries, and they were able to produce water for themselves. So that is an advantage of your case. That's why your case is good. Your advantages are basically your based weapons on your case. They're your little bit of offense. They are why your case needs to pass. The big impacts you're going to be bringing into when it comes time to do a little bit of impact calc. Basically, your advantages are the backbone of your plan. Or really, not the backbone so much as they are the muscles on the limbs of your plan. The plan and solvency would be your backbone. But really, you can actually, thinking about it, look at the case as a body. Solvency and the plan are the bedrock upon which the rest of the plan is built. You cannot have a plan if it doesn't solve and if there's no real advocacy. Your advantages are what gets the work done. Your advantages bring in the big impacts and help you win the round. So basically, remember that structure. Enhancement, plan, solvency, and then advantages. Basically, stick to that structure. You should have a pretty decent one, I see. Make sure your plan is something you can advocate. Make sure you don't change the plan. Make sure your plan is as thorough as possible. And realistically, you should have a pretty decent 1 AC.